We will start after 4 minutes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in ITAR online weekly webinars. Today, our guest is Dr. Ghassan Mardini from University of Qatar. Dr. Ghassan obtained his PhD in accounting from University of Dundee in 2012. Certainly, he is an associate professor of accounting at Qatar University in the College of Business Economics, Department of Accounting and Management, Information System. During his work at Qatar University, he has published several research papers in the field of accounting in peer-reviewed scientific journals that are listed in the best research work quality measured, such as SGR, ABS, ABDC, and Scopus. He is holding CCS and IFRS Cert Professional Certificate. He is a member of the Board of Directors in Scientific Accounting Association, Qatar. He is also a member of the Board of Directors of Asian Pacific Management Accounting Association in Japan. This webinar is recorded and live in YouTube. After Dr. Ghassan's presentation, we'll open the floor for any question. You have two ways to ask your question. The first one, you can write your comments in or your question in Q&A below your screen, or you can raise your hand and we'll go one by one to ask Dr. Ghassan your question. Thank you so much. Dr. Ghassan, thank you so much for accepting my invitation, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for your kind invitation. It is like my pleasure to accept it, and I believe that ITAR group is actually a young, let's say, group, but it actually have a huge impact on, like, let's say, have great opportunities for the researchers to share knowledge. And my purpose today to be here is like, main purpose here is just like to share with you a paper that published recently. And since Dr. Ahmed provide for me like about half hour or 40 minutes to talk, so I will not go through the classical presentation that just start with the introduction and so on and so on. I will just also share, like, let's say, my research knowledge to the capacity of this paper, and focus on the main contribution of this paper and share with you like the journey of this paper. Now, it will be also my honor to accept any further like invitations in the future if you would like to talk about like a workshop or else, and inshallah I will like try to manage with you inshallah a workshop that will have knowledge for everyone. Now I will just share the slides. And as you can see, the paper is about the impact of firm performance and corporate governance mechanisms on the intellectual capital disclosures in the CEO statements. And our main target was like the SPF 120 French listed firms. So the paper is like about the French business environment. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank my co-author, Dr. Fathiya Al-Ash-Lahyani, for her tremendous efforts in this paper, especially on data collection. And my co-author is actually from Tunisia, so she is well, let's say, established in the French language, and some actually of the registration documents were in French. So she has a tremendous job in data collection. So first of all, I would like to share with you that having co-authors is a good thing. And for now, like I have for now about 22 co-authors that I have worked on with from different environments. So just like to let you know that choosing your co-authors is a very, let's say, important matter. in order to go to your success that inshallah you are looking for. And actually, sometimes I have some advices that try to work by yourself, but every time when I can see co-authors that they have passion and dedication to work with, it will be going through and through. So actually, and this paper actually is my first paper about the intellectual capital disclosure. So it takes time to establish the idea. And inshallah, it will be like a new stream for me. And I would like here also to provide to you a tiny advice that try to emphasize on the new fields, especially if you have after the promotion in order to enhance your profile for the next one. And for the young researchers, try to publish or to maintain between the quality and the quantity of the papers in order to compete in the market, as well as let's say to have a good background and a good a good profile, academic profile in terms of the research. So here, as I said, that I will not be a classical presentation. I will maybe go out of the road sometimes in order to share with you my knowledge in general. And this is our main target for today. So the journey of the paper is actually that the research idea established in 2018, and this is why you will notice that the data actually is to 2017. And we submit the paper to the Journal of Intellectual Capital on February 2020. We receive a major revision on May 2020 from 3 reviewers. And actually, we have also comments from the associate editor. And the chief editor is Mayor Warrington, actually from the Mississippi State University. He doing a great job actually in terms of the editorial tasks. And actually, due to the to the COVID-19 pandemic, we sit at home here in Qatar, and actually our vacation plans just get ruined. So why not to do the paper as soon as we can? So we revise and submit the paper on July, even though that we have about until March, but we just go through it that way, and we get accepted and the paper published online without a volume yet on August 2020. Now the idea is that the ranks of the journal, as you can see there, it has a tremendous one, but sometimes they a good journal maybe will take 1 year or 2 years, but this is actually depends on as you know that the reviewers are doing this job as a voluntary basis, so it's based on what they have. So actually, as well as the chief editor is voluntary basis, and also that it depends on what you have in terms of the communication. And actually, this journal is about intellectual capital, but yet it has too many streams. So I recommend you after the seminar, inshallah, if you just go tackle its scope and see how it goes. Yet it is actually, from the reviewers, we have about 12 pages of reviews and comments, and I will share with you some of the major comments. Now, one of the important aspects that to have a good quality of paper is actually based on the reviewers' comments. And we are aware that it is based on volunteer basis, but from my perception is actually that even though that if it is voluntary and I will get nothing out of it, but only just appreciation from the editor, yet I have to be very honest with my let's say review. Also provide a constructive one. Now sometimes maybe as maybe some of you have this one, but recently I have a paper got a rejection from one reviewer and the other reviewer did a minor, and the associate editor decided to reject the paper. But when I see about the rejection, for instance, if they have a question about the literature review, he just write down the literature review is somewhat sufficient. And somewhat sufficient is actually not helpful for me and not helpful to the editor to know to what extent it is sufficient. So sometimes maybe you will get lucky with a tremendous job of reviewers that they will provide to you every tiny piece of review without showing you that they want to revise it, to reject it, but rather than they want actually, let's say, to see a good quality paper in the journal. And somewhat sufficient, and this and that, we have like another paper somewhat sufficient, but we revised the paper. And when we have another rejection, it was like the comment was like the literature review was better. So you are not helping me here, okay? So it was better, and before it was somewhat sufficient. So it was somewhat sufficient to my extent of like knowledge that I have restructured the paper, add a new paper maybe that I am missing, and so on. This is what, like, to my extent of the understanding, but somehow it was better. So again, this reviewer is not helpful. So it depends also on the reviewer to have a good quality paper, and usually in good quality journals, you will have actually a tremendous job from the reviewers. And this one, not only one or two, it's actually 3 reviewers, and they were very helpful. So just to give you some examples about the comments we received, like we have actually, yes, please.
Sorry for interrupt you. May you please maximize your screen, please? Your PowerPoint, if you can maximize, it will be great. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So here, like some of the major comments that we actually receive, like for instance, for the first one, we have choose as the firm performance, we have a market indicator as the top NQ, and actually we have the ROE, but he also asked why we don't include the ROA, and he just looking for a justification why we don't include it. And through the tremendous job of Dr. Fathiya, we actually not only just justify why we collect, why we like just choose the ROE, we have recollect the data for the ROA, and we included in the paper as a tabulated results. This actually enhanced the paper somehow and satisfy the reviewer because we go beyond his, let's say, we go beyond his comments. So usually sometimes it is a good idea to go through or to go like beyond the comment of the reviewer. For instance, we are actually use the impression management theory and the agency theory. We actually take the risk to implement these 2 theories into the paper to find a link in order to advance the knowledge and to the best of our, let's say, knowledge that, like in terms of the intellectual capital, no one has combined before in terms of like the best of our knowledge in terms of the impression management and agency theory. That it is actually focused and well organized. So here the reviewer is not like, let's say, anger or let's say reduce the quality of the paper, but actually he was very polite to ask like if you can better explain the relationship between impression management theory and agency theory. And this is actually what is the, like, let's say, I believe that what we are looking from the reviewers in this term. And actually this enhanced the paper a lot, and let's say add to the contribution that we find actually a link between the impression management theory, because we are dealing with the CEO statements and the CEO characteristics, and also as well as with the agency theory. Now, another reviewer, he actually asked about the role of the board of directors, internal committees in terms of that. I will get back to this if we apply it or not, and we will see. But for the next one, like let's say also we have get like let's say a shock that one of the reviewers asked about the education and the age of the CEOs, and this is actually again informs you that actually the reviewer has up-to-date knowledge. Why? Because when we get back to the papers that are dealing with the corporate governance, we have noticed that these 2 actually recently applied in some published paper, and we found like in 2019 and 2020 papers that they applied the corporate governance, let's say the education and the age of the CEO into the corporate governance mechanism. And actually, again, this is like very helpful to add contribution to knowledge that we go back again and see if anyone done that based on the education and the age of the CEO in terms of, let's say, of the intellectual capital disclosures, but we cannot find. So to best of our knowledge, again, we have added these 2 for the first time as intellectual capital ones. And the proxies we used for this look like not like somehow for me it was not sufficient, but this is what we have from the prior studies. So we say finger crossed that it will be go through, and it was fine. So again, Another reviewer also, as you can see in the last one, he actually again emphasized into the link between the two theories. So this is like just like an introduction, is that I hope that if you will publish or submit a paper to this journal, I hope that you will have the same journey. Even though that you will have too many comments, that doesn't mean that the paper is not good, but it means that they are interested into the paper rather than that the paper is not good. But since that we have some reviewers, they say it is somewhat sufficient. This is actually for me, like somehow I will not be able to go through the paper unless that I need to, but it is like just reduce your moral to work into the paper. So I will just go through the paper now, and I will take like some time also to explain the main knowledge that we are dealing with. Now, intellectual capital actually is like defined in many ways in the previous studies. And actually, intellectual capital is a voluntary disclosure that we are dealing with, let's say, the intellectual capital based on the CEO statements or intellectual capital based on the annual reports. Now, maybe you will ask why we have focused on the CEO statement. I will go back to it. But actually, that the intellectual capital is intangible assets, somehow, somewhere that we are not like looking for it, but actually it has tremendous, are used as a measurement of the performance of the firm, as well as like contributing to the knowledge of the economy in a different ways. So intellectual capital actually in the literature is like stuffed in some places, and we are aware of that when we publish this or we will go through this paper, but we have to take a different aspect in this paper, just only not like, for instance, one theory, we have to take two theories, and let's say we include too many variables in order like to like have a knowledge to have, let's say, contribution to the knowledge. And now we are aware of that the intellectual capital, if you get back to the literature review, it has like 5, let's say, capitals, but we actually focus only on the 3 that are the most common or the most accepted, which is the human capital, structural capital, and the relational capital. Then with the other 2, as I am aware of that they are related to the culture, and they are related actually to the psychological aspects of the CEO and the board of directors of the firm, and we do not go through that because we are like focusing into the most 3 common ones. So actually, it is also based on let's say let's say the environment that you're looking for. Like sometimes in some countries you will find the annual report like is let's say 50 pages, 100 pages sometimes, and especially in France, it is actually very, and I will share with you some idea that if you are like looking for some rich data, you can go through the French listed firms because they are not having only an annual report rather than what we call document report. And if Dr. Fathiya is here, maybe she can mention the French name, but actually they call it a document report. And this document report, including the annual report, the document report actually is like 300 pages. It includes like environmental indicators, and based on the auditory AMF, the auditory multi-financials, I forget the name, but it is like, it is called, again, it is a French word, but it is the AMF, which is the regulator in France. They actually have, like, for instance, some laws for the environment. So there, if you're looking for, and the social perspective. So there, you can see that a tremendous, and let's say a treasure data there in the document report. If you would like to go through the disclosure index manually, if not, you can go to the Thomson and Reuters and let's say Bloomberg databases, data stream as well, but data stream usually focus on the UK. But actually, you can like go there and dig deep into that to find some tremendous, actually, let's say, data. So now the idea of the paper is that we are not just take some papers, they actually take human capital by itself or structural capital by itself, or 2 of them, but we take all of them 3. We actually link it also with the impact factor, with the performance, as well as with what we call the carbon governance mechanisms, as well as control variables. So we have like within or let's say under the umbrella or through the lenses of the two theories. So actually we have like some aspects, even though that we are aware that the investigated most intellectual capital disclosure dimensions is actually stuffed. And as I remember when I see some of Dr. let's say Ahmad presentations about how to define a research gap, actually sometimes even though that you can see that intellectual capital disclosure is stuffed in the market of the research, but sometimes you can actually dig deep into it and identify a further research, because research has no limits. So you can go through with a tiny piece of idea to make it like a big project. Now, while we have focused on the CEO statement, now the CEO statement actually it is from 1 to 3 pages or 4 pages maximum, but this one has enriched, let's say, knowledge, or let's say knowledge-based information about the firm. And actually it has sometimes when the CEO thank, and this is the most important item we find for the human capital, that when they thank the employees is actually like a best knowledge, and this is a huge appreciation. And as I can see that after we finish some of the documents, I tell Dr. Fathiya, now this is good that the CEO actually, or most of the CEOs actually, they thank their employees and they train them and so on. So here I am as a stakeholder, from external stakeholder, you can see that I'm talking about how the company thanked them. So it is like a knowledge-based, that intangible asset that is very important to do so. So for the CEO statement is actually enriched with such information, and from the whole list, as you can see that from the whole 300 pages of the document registration for each company for each year, we just do on to only 2 pages or 3 pages, and we bring the idea of this research to life. So it is like a good idea to motivate yourself by looking for the recent research gaps. And actually I would like here to thank, for instance, Dr. Khalid Hosseini, because he is actually sharing all the time that some recent new papers and new ideas, and this is actually very helpful. But nothing can be like, let's say, served to you 100%, maybe like 20 or 30, and the 70% will be on you. And I'm especially talking with the young researchers. Now, the idea actually, just to give you, for instance, the Air France, and it is actually one of the most important companies, and we are looking for in the SPF 120, we are looking for the in UK and FTSE 100, but here we are looking for the SPF 120, and actually we take only the non-financial firms with the CEO statement. So we actually, unfortunately, we take out some firms that they do not have, let's say, I will just use, okay, so. Okay, you can't see the laser. Oh, yeah. So as you can see here, we can have here some tremendous information about the environment indicators. This one by itself, it can be a research idea to deal with, what are the determinants of the environment indicators. And also here, the financial report, as you can see here, we have the KFI, and actually in a different page of the paper or the registration document, we have the CAM for the auditing. So here, just only, as you can see, few pages can do a huge research paper. So the French listed firms is actually having the registration document is rich with great idea for research. So here and actually we have Airbus, we have the Air France, huge firms in the global. We also have Lauren, or what is called for the makeup. So also that this one is there. So we also, it is part of our sample. So here we can talk about a huge amount of data that we can dig deep into as a research papers. Now the main contribution actually of the paper is as we can see before that previous studies only explore the relation between intellectual capital disclosure and firm performance, and some only with the carbon mechanisms, but we actually take the two, we take the risk to take the two. Also, we have a theoretical framework of the study to integrate the agency and the impression management theory. And like we have found a link between these two, and it is about the manipulation of the data. So like the agency, you know, you are aware about the principle, the agent principle relation, that sometimes that will like increase the asymmetry of the information and manipulate the information. On the other hand, some CEOs would like to impress the management as well as the stakeholders. So actually they are like showing that they are impressing the board of directors to show that we are doing fine in order like to cover their performance as well. So these two theories like have a link between the manipulation, and again here we were like not aware of that. We just like take each one of these by itself, but then we find the theoretical link is a manipulation of these. So here you can like take this step forward on the future research, like between these two theories are comparable in terms of the manipulation of the data, especially for the voluntary disclosures rather than the mandatory disclosures. So manipulation of the voluntary disclosure. And also, like not too many students actually take into consideration the intellectual capital disclosures of the French listed firms. So here we take a new one, and actually the only exception of this is actually Benjelloun paper in 2013, which is actually like take the intellectual capital with the capital market or the capital of the firm, and this here actually link it with that way. So here we are taking like a new French listed firms as to verify the previous findings of the previous firm. And actually, as a contribution from a practical implication is actually comprehensive for implication for managers of the French listed firms, also the authority, the marsh financiers, which is the regulators, as well as the stakeholders in general. And actually, this paper has been called actually by the European Union to be taken into consideration for the listed papers. So actually, again, here we have a practical implication just by the paper that is published that we are actually aware of, and I have like or the journal like notify me that this paper will be sent to these regulators and so on and so on. So actually, it shows that real practical implications in the EU. Now, these four actually brings the paper to the life because we are not looking forward or looking about regular, let's say, ideas, rather than we are looking for like combine like or combine some variables together, or let's say looking on from the lenses of two theories and so. Now, the theoretical framework, as you can see that we have for the agency theory, most of you actually aware that we have the agent and the principal, let's say agent and principal relation. And from this relation, we can be aware that the weak regulation of the intellectual capital disclosures may provide the managers to manipulate and disclose information in line with their own interest. And this is lead to have a conflict, what we call a conflict between the stakeholders and the managers. And actually, on the other hand, Yan 2017 also found that managers can they employ their information management skills to manipulate the views, the benefits, and the interests of the shareholders. So through the CEO statement, it is like, let's say, a double-edged sword that can be beneficial to the shareholders and the stakeholders, as well as it can be not, in terms that there is a manipulation from the CEOs in order like to cover some other stuff or ideas. So the idea between the conflict between these two, which increase, let's say, make like the weak regulation to increase the symmetry of the information, which is not good, and as well as from the pressure management skills. So we would like to see that if the CEOs were like, rather than decrease the symmetry of the information for the benefit of the shareholders. And we have like about 100 one page or 1.5 page about the theory, but here I'm just focusing about the let's say what we call the link that we can find between these two theories. So actually the interplay between the financial performance and the CEG mechanism of the intellectual capital disclosure in the CEO statements actually add a connection between these two theoretical frameworks, because we are looking for the financial information, the financial performance, as well as the capital governance mechanisms from two lenses, from the or let's say two lenses of the agency theory as well as the impression management theory. Now, actually, we have here like a comment is that again from the reviewer in a good way, that he said, I'm aware that these are the most common selected capital governance mechanisms that we choose in the first instance, as you can see in the first point. But then he said that actually why you do not include the CEO age and the CEO and education, or why do not include, another reviewer say, why do not include the auditing committee? And what we have done here actually is actually collect both of them, and we run the analysis, rerun the analysis again using the random regression, and we can see that we can just like where we able to satisfy one of the reviewers, because about the auditing committee actually it ruined the whole model, and it was the information for it was not significant, and it leads to insignificancy of other variables. And we have actually provide the reviewers about the what will happen if we include the auditing committee, and what will happen if we include the CEO age and education, and the CEO age and education part, when the idea is that we can include them because they have enhanced the paper, but for the auditing committee it's actually ruined it. But we have added as a file not for review, for the reviewers, in order to see that we were honest, that we collect the data again for the auditing committee characteristics, and then we go through it, but we were not able to do so. So the idea of the reviewer asking in a good way, in a polite way, that can you please try this? So we have tried them, and we were like finding some good findings, and it actually make a tremendous knowledge into the papers that we are, to the best of our knowledge, no prior studies of the intellectual capital adding the CEO age and education. And as you can see that many recent papers, they actually include them. So here I'm like provide to you a red flag that these two are very important, and recently they are for recent papers they are actually looking for. And I'm gonna tell you about the proxy that we use actually for the CEO age, which as our private actually it is the age of the CEO, and it will be like a number. And from like, for instance, 2010, it will be his age 50, 2011, it will be 51, 2012, it will be 52, and so on. So that way. For the education, actually, we have taken the education from the perspective of, let's say, for the education of the CEO, we actually get back to the previous papers, and they identified that if you have an engineering degree, it will be given 1. If not, it will be given 0. Now, for me, why it is engineering degree is actually like, it could be like because it is very beneficial for the non-financial firms rather than the financial firms, and so on. But actually, we have depend onto the prior studies what they have used. As you can see here, Chen, and Lee et al. Here we can see that they have using that way, so we use it that way, and actually it works like to make some tremendous, let's say, contribution to knowledge, as well as tremendous, let's say, satisfy, let's say, the reviewer as well, because we do not like ignore them, we just like add them, collect the data, and so on. So that way that we have the story of the CEO age and education. So when we read the comment, it was like half a page. Like when you read it for the first time, you will be say, okay, this is like too much, but take a deep breath, rethink about it for the 2 days, coming days, and when you get back to it, you can say, I can do it. This is the idea that we need to collect the data again. And for the CEO identification, actually, like Dr. Fathiya and myself, we have collected them manually, not from any database, because we get back to each, let's say, document report, and we can like collect it manually. So we end up with the model of the study. As you can see, we have here, sorry. So here we have the firm performance. As you can see, we have 3 indicators. And the agency theory and the impression management theory, we demonstrate a theoretical link between them. And we like have details into the C section 2.1. And then we have the corporate governance mechanisms. This is what we include. And actually, we try to include the audit committee characteristics, but that doesn't work. And we end up actually with intellectual capital disclosure, which is the total score for all the disclosure index. And then we have the human capital, structural capital, and relational capital. And actually, here, as you can see, H1, which means H1A for WQ, H1B for ROE, H1C for ROA. So here we have like about 12 hypotheses, but actually like under the umbrella of 4. So here, actually, it is not a good idea to have too many, let's say, hypotheses, but from the reader, when you see 4, but actually we have sub-hypotheses, I believe this will be fine. But if we have hypotheses 1 to 12, somehow or sometimes this is given to the chief auditor that this is too much, because every hypothesis you need to justify it, to find its data, and so on and so on. So this is what we have actually for as well as for the company characteristics. We do not look forward for the firm owners or family ownership rather than institutional ownership, because we are dealing with the largest companies of the French listed firms. So now here we actually, as you can see, this link was not there. We just like have a different model, but with the so let's say I would like to call it the support of the reviewers of their great comments. We bring it to a different way. And this is what we have, like, as you can see, for the WQ, ROE, and A. We, based on the prior studies, we take about the positive impact, as you can see, for the human capital, for the structural capital. And as you can see here, it is negative because there was a debate about it, but we consider the negative side rather than the positive side. And here we can see that we have the relational capital. Again, we repeat it. As you can see, we end up with 12 models. Now, these 12 models, actually, when you look at it for the first time, you can say that this is like very complicated. But actually, what we have done is simply that we just change the independent variable and the dependent variable. That's it. But the corporate governance, we actually take it as a control variable. And this is like actually another idea that could be in the future research, that we can take a look on the corporate governance from another perspective as a hypothesis model. So here is what we have for the hypothesis, and this is like built up on the models that we have. Actually, before the submission, it was only WQ and ROE. But then we add the ROA, not only justify why we have choose the ROE over the ROA, but we actually take it again, and it shows like similar results. And I will show you that the ROE and ROA, all of the hypotheses were rejected. And actually, this is like very fine, very, I mean, it is, even though they are rejected, but it shows that there is no inverse causality problems. And also, it is like show that even though that the company used the ROE, ROA as a as accounting indicator, actually they are both of them. They don't have impact onto the intellectual capital rather than the market one. And this is actually like in terms of reality, this is like reflect the reality, because the CEO statement actually is like selling the firm or showing let's say what we have the achievements of the firm. So you are selling the company selling itself to the firm and to the market rather than to the accounting indicators. So here we have used the GICS sector, and this is like end up with 66 sample firms. And again, here we have actually like 1 out of 1 and 8 sample firms of non-financial firms. Actually, we only have 66 who have CEO statement. So even though that the CEO statement is actually sometimes is not there, or we can notice that it is like made it like as highlights of the firm, and we are not looking for what highlights of the firm or what are the achievements of the firm. In general, we need it from the eyes of the CEO. So this is like one of the main criteria of the paper. And now the reviewers ask, and maybe you ask why it is from 2010 2017, and we actually simply tell them that this is the idea, this is the data that we can get. So I hope it works. So the idea is that, and usually sometimes you have to be careful about the period sample that you need, like to justify why you choose from this and that if there is any specific events happen. But for us, that we have tried our best, like to have further and further observations. And actually it stopped 2017 because we start with the idea in 2018. So the idea of the paper takes about 1.5 years, but the first submission to the acceptance, it takes actually 6 months. So if you have well organized or well structured your paper, you will be rewarded at the end. This is the main idea that we have here. So this is like about the sample that we have of the non-financial firms. And for the disclosure index that we have built up, I will just share with you, because actually it is very large. So I will just try to share with you the paper. Sorry, I'm a little bit rusty with the Zoom. And here is the paper that the acceptance version of it. Yet we don't have, let's say, volume for it. But here is the appendix, as you can see, for the human capital. And as long as you are relying into studies that they verify these items. So the idea is that these studies actually not only take them, but they actually make some verifying or validity or reliability tests in order to show that these are applicable. And actually we have relied on, as you can see in too many papers, to build up the human capital, which is actually 16 items. Yet some items, they were like not published too much. And but some items, especially that the employee thanked, actually it was a tremendous, like almost 100% that we can see it from the sample. So here is the human capital, as you can see, and based on the as you can see, based on the papers, and these papers actually also use the, as you can see, Jan used the impression management theory or the agency theory, as well as some other theories, but mainly we focus on that the two theories in order to enhance that we are looking from these items based on the literature review. And this is, as you can see, the structural capital. And for the R&D, it was a fantastic findings for it. It actually like make like some of the results actually have done very well, because the R&D is actually, if you talk about it, you will have a competitive disadvantage, but also in the same time, maybe you will have enrich, let's say, information for the stakeholders. So it is like, and we have find that this information could be manipulated from the eyes of the theory. And then we move on to the relational capital. And as you can see here, brands, talking about any agreements or licensing agreements. And then here we have, they talk about the market share, favorable contracts as well. These are actually based also on the prior studies. And for the fourth one, which means here we have each one of these, we have an index. And the last index is actually all the score or the average score of the 3 index together. So it will be the overall intellectual capital score. And this is actually very useful. Why? Because sometimes you will find the human capital, for instance, is positive, the structural capital is negative, and then you can see the relational capital, for instance, was positive, and the overall was positive. So you can see that the positivity of the relational and the human capital get over the negativity of the structural capital, and you can see from different perspectives. So this is how you can go through the disclosure index as you can see. And unfortunately, the disclosure index it has an element of subjectivity, but we try to reduce that by I'm looking forward for the, let's say, the English, let's say, documents or registration documents. And Dr. Fathi look on the French one, and actually she look again for the English one, but for me I can't look for the French one. So she asked to one of our colleagues to look over them in order to increase the reliability and the validity of the disclosure index, and we end up with I hope that it was like the perfect score. Yet we still have a subject of element of subjectivity. Yet we try to reduce it as much as we can. So please, if you allow me to go back to the slides. And here is actually the what we have as a disclosure index. We have how do we score it, and again, as you can see here, we have the total for all of them. Now, for the random effect regressions, actually, we have run the Berg and Begin LM test to see that if the pooled OLS works or if the fixed regression, fixed effect regression. But as you can see here, the PBLM test is significant. So here we are in favor of the fixed regression. And then we need to make sure that through the Hausman test, that if the random effect works or the fixed effect. And as you can see, the Hausman test actually is not significant. So we go through with the random effect. Now, if you have the Hausman test as significant, in this case, it is better to go through the fixed effect regression for the regression that you will take. And we have actually run some GMM untabulated, let's say, data for the indigeneity test, and we take the overall intellectual capital score as the instrumental variable, and actually it shows that there is no, let's say, indigeneity test, and this is actually was untabulated. So we do not show the result. We send the results to the reviewers or to the editor, but we do not show it in the paper because the paper is actually like about 10 or 11,000 words in overall. And maybe the editor, because maybe the paper, he liked the paper, maybe he just skipped the, the limit word, because the limit word, I believe, is 10,000. So maybe he skipped the limit word. So the limit word, actually be careful about this one as well, because I got a rejection for a paper because of the limit word that it was 9,000, but we write down 11. So we get just a rejection because I remember that the reviewer said that it seems that the authors do not read the guides, the guidelines of the journal, and this is actually disrespect to the journal editorial board. And when the the chief editor see that, maybe he take it on the next level and he just get a rejection because of the or the associate editor say that to the chief and he take a decision of the rejection. So again, here you have to be careful about the word count. Here maybe the paper was like he liked the paper and actually we go through the word count. We were lucky actually about the keyword, the word count aspect. Here are the regressions. As you can see, we can have like what we have the intellectual capital, human capital, structural capital, and relational capital. Now I will just move on very quickly because I can see that the time is running out. I just have maybe like 10 minutes. And here we have the descriptive statistics. The overall, as you can see, the lowest one is the human capital, and some firms actually they have 100% out of it. Some firms are not. The structural capital surprisingly was the highest, even though that the company sometimes they don't want to show their structural or their research and development let's say plans, and this is actually derived competitive disadvantage. And as you can see here, I will just skip it for what we have. And here is the results for the model from 1 to 4, which is for the typical Q. And as you can see here, we have accept all the, let's say, all the hypotheses. And here, if you just allow me to, sorry, minimize that one, because like here we can see from the perspective of, let's say, for instance, for model 1, just for the time being, actually, as you can see that the findings for model 1, for instance, for the overall intellectual capital disclosures, it's actually donate that there is a knowledge-based vision of the firm, which is positively related to the performance. And actually here we can see that the CEO here emphasized that the intellectual capital is useful to the decision process, and he has, like, let's say, no constraints into publishing it. And from the, let's say, management theory perspective, now here it is advocate that there is a disclosing more intellectual capital information that reflect the effectiveness of the management and the firm intellectual capital resources. And actually it is indicating that there is a self-confident leadership with high competence. Since it is like a positive with the Tobin Q, it shows that there is like self-confidence of the CEO. Now, in terms of that, we have, based on the agency theory, here it is actually could be like they want like to derive a competitive advantage, not disadvantage, and in order like to show some further innovation through that the higher intellectual capital disclosure, which mean or higher Tobin Q or higher, sorry, performance, which mean higher intellectual capital disclosure, and which that result from the perspective of the agency theory, it is actually resulting in a lower information asymmetry and higher transparency in terms of the relation between the principal and the agent. Again, for the time being, I will just move on. And here, as you can see, we have the Tobin Q results is highly significant with all of the, let's say, models. And here, as you can see, we have talked about the strategic importance of the intellectual capital to stakeholders from the two theories. As you can see, is what I just like to talk about in terms of the two theories. Now, based on the same models, we also take into consideration the corporate governance, and interestingly, that most of the corporate governance mechanisms based on the Tobin Q and based on the ROE are actually significant, most of them. And this is actually looking for that for the Tobin Q and ROE as a financial performance, it has like the corporate governance actually with these two, it has impact with the intellectual capital disclosure, but like for the ROE, with the, let's say, the intellectual capital, it was not significant. So here we can see that the corporate governance in both financial performance indicators, market or accounting, we can see that there is an impact. And interestingly, that we can see that and expectedly that the CEO age and the CEO education is actually, let's say, have an impact into the significant impact into the human capital, as well as for the structural capital, rather than the overall. So here we can see that the age, CEO age and education have great results with related to the human capital, intellectual capital, to the human intellectual capital. Now, gender diversity, maybe I forget to add the proxies of the, let's say, of the variables, but the CEO age and education, I talked about them before. The CEO duality, if it is like have a dual responsibility, this will be 1, if not 0. Gender diversity, how much is the percentage of the female board of directors out of the board in percentage for the females. And the cultural diversity, again, the percentage of the foreign directors compared to the local directors. And as you can see for the ROE and ROA results, it was like in the other opposite way, with like, as you can see, just 10% in the, for instance, for middle 5. Just like 10% for middle 5, and for the ROA, nothing was there, but we actually not only just justify why we take them, we just recollect the data and added in order to validate our results. And as you can see here, the age for the human capital, as I said before, it is very typical to what we have there. But on the other hand, as you can see that the adjusted R square is a little bit higher compared to the Tobin Q. But in terms of the intellectual capital, we can see that the company, through the CEO statement, is trying to using the market indicator of the, let's say, financial performance rather than the ROE and the ROA in terms of the effect on the intellectual capital disclosure. So here is just like, Dr. Ahmed, do I have 2 minutes, right?
Go ahead, no problem, Dr. Hassan.
Thank you so much. So here we have like the, there is like an enthusiasm of the CEO through what we have in terms of the IC dimensions. And actually in the paper, we call them dimensions, and sometimes we call them content, IC content. So here we have like, he's trying like to use the intellectual capital resources to a wide range of stakeholders, as well as we can see that the components of the intellectual capital breakdown, as we can see, it helps all the customer knowledge, specifically for the relational. Now the relational is actually, let's say, customer knowledge and enhance distribution channels actually related to the findings of the relational capital, because we are talking about the external relations with the market, and restructure the firm value chain in a competitive global context, take into consideration that here we have large companies like Michelin, Airbus, and so on. So here is like our main conclusions, and as we can see that we can confirm that the intellectual capital disclosures from the perspective of the 2 theories that decrease the asymmetry in the intellectual capital information. Yet we have employed the impression management theory. We can see that there was a higher level of transparency for the French listed firms, and especially that this was like for the structural capital, it derives. I hope that I can share it with you, and if you want to share with you the paper, I will be able to do so through the ResearchGate, through my account on ResearchGate. I will be happy to send it for you. And you can see that here we have some like good, great insights into the relational research and development information. Now, actually, also some, so this is what we have, and maybe like, actually, one of my colleagues asked me why you do not show the items disclosure index one by one, how many they have, not only the overall human. For instance, for a human capital number 1, why you don't show how much is the on a yearly basis, how much you can see that the disclosure for the item number 1, item number 2, item number 3, and so on. And I tell him, thank you so much for asking this question. This can take another paper using a longitudinal, sorry for the pronunciation, but it's like a longitudinal analysis that you can take let's say, the level of disclosure year by year, and you can see that how it is like the trend. Is it going up or going down, and go beyond the reasons if it is why it's going up or why it is variation. So here is like another another paper that we can show that, let's say, the disclosure index in depth, like per item, like I have done in my PhD, and some papers is about segmental reporting, is that showing the, let's say, disclosure item by item and year by year. So here is that, like another contribution that we will think about. So we can, like, again, taking into the same idea from different perspective, but we have to be careful before we go through it, not to get like stamped on a wall that someone done this before. So it is like in that way. So here are the research implications. And as I told you that this paper is required by some regulators in France, and we have the journal actually lovely share it with them. And we have actually like these implications, as you can see, that we ask also the AMF like to make the intellectual capital, I'm not going to say mandatory, but let's say to make it on like the encourage the companies to like talk about it. Some university, some companies, they don't have a COA statement at all, but just they have highlights, and simply if they can change the perspective to the COO, this will be like a great effort for the AMF in order to take into consideration forward, as like encourage the companies to further and further go with that, because we are looking for the COO statement, just a tiny piece of the annual report or the document registration, but it actually provide a good source of information for the stakeholders. And as I said, that the scoring method have some element of subjectivity, and again we try to reduce it as much as we can through some validity and reliability test. And future research could be like, if we talk about the competitive disadvantage relating to the intellectual capital disclosures. So again, within the, let's say, the document of the French listed firms, you can go through it and you can actually have some great ideas relating to the intellectual capital with like ESG, environmental, social, and so on. And actually, as you can see, like if you want to go to take a case study, for instance, for Air France, within the annual report, you can see that they are actually have to talk about the passengers characteristics and the passengers numbers. So here again, you can also go through it from a different perspective. Now, maybe I'm talking about research, future research in general, but actually, I mean, like from like tiny piece of idea, you can like publish, inshallah, a good journal. And what about this comment? Actually, as I told you that we select the audit committee characteristics, we have collected the data, and this comment actually we do not done it in the paper, but we have sent it to the editor. Why we do not done it? Because the information, they were statistically insignificant, margin exploratory power were negligible, and also actually we have, as I said, I told you that it ruins the paper. So what do you think for Marvin? So he said, or she actually like taken into consideration this message to the reviewers, and from the major revision we just get acceptance. So that's like a big jump from like a good journal. Thank you for your attendance, and again, it is my pleasure to share this kind of knowledge with you. And please, if you have anything to add, or if you want like to tackle me on Facebook or whatever, I will be my pleasure to, inshallah, answer you to the best of my capacity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghassan, for your useful presentation. I really like your presentation so much, and actually it's the heart of my presentations and also my PhD. So I will bother you in some questions, and after that we'll let other audience to ask you questions. Again, thank you so much for accepting my invitation, Dr. Ghassan, and thank you all for joining ITAR. After my question to Dr. Ghassan, please, anyone have any question, just drop it in Q&A or raise your hand, and we are happy to ask Dr. Ghassan any of your question. Dr. Ghassan, I want to ask you, you said you and your co-author choose French context. So may you explain why you choose French context?
Yeah, well, actually, we use it because when we go through the literature review about the intellectual capital in general, we find that not too many studies get into consideration the French business environment. And there we can say it doesn't mean that if we just replicate someone's work into a new business, it is a contribution. This is actually not a good way. But we have taken it because we found only like one paper, like just for this exception, and I can like pronounce the name fully, which is because here we can see that in the paper we said that some people, they actually have a literature on the Turkish banking sector, the United Kingdom, and so on, but we cannot see that much into the French listed firms. And here we just like need to tackle this, a new environment, but also with a brand new idea with 3 components, like have firm performance and corporate governance as well, within a lenses of 2 theories.
Great. Doctor, you choose also in your independent variables the corporate governance mechanism. So may you please tell us about the measurement? I know you said some of them, but I want to know about board meetings, how you measure it, and also gender, culture, and culture.
Yeah, sure. I will share actually the table from the paper itself that show the proxies, but actually I forget to add it into the slides. Just one second. I will just share with you the paper. I actually, you know, if you ask me what I have for lunch yesterday, maybe I forget. So this paper is published 2 weeks ago, so I can like just realize some of them, but sorry, 2 months ago. So I will just realize some of them, but I will now share with you the full table. And actually, it is based on the let's say literature review, most proxies used. So I will just yeah. So here we can see for the variables. As you can see here, we have the board independence is the ratio of number of independent and executive. And here I can answer your question, and as well as if the audience have the same question for the word size, board meetings, and so on yearly basis. And actually, some of these were actually.
Sorry, Dr. Ghassan. So here, those measurements, as you said, your paper about CEO, right? Not about the board of directors, correct? So all these independent variables, I don't know, but please explain. Is it's supposed to be just for CEO as independent, or it's all control variables? It's not independent, right?
Yes.
So I can see age, education, duality, all of them CEO. So 100% they are independent. But what about the other characteristic like board independent, gender, culture, board size, and board meeting? Are they control variables or independent variable?
Well, okay. Thank you for your interesting question. And actually, like as we speak, like here is the governance is actually all of them. They were like controlled. And actually what you are looking for is about the financial performance as an independent one. So the idea is that when we go through the model, as you can see, here is
sorry,
yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Ghassan. If ROA, ROE, and Tobin Q are independent, so what is the dependent?
The dependent is the intellectual capital, the four indices.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So if we go to the model here, we can see that we change the model, we change the dependent, and we change here the Tobin Q with what we have it here. So the topic you have 4 with for the indices, and the board governance is actually just a control variable with the control variables as well.
Correct. Can you go up, please? The same in the to the measurement of corporate governance characteristic. All right. So another question, Dr. Ghassan, regarding the independent variable, which is you said CO age, education, and duality. Now, as I know, most of the authors that they use education, they put it as a proxy for gender diversity. So is it a proxy for gender diversity? Because mostly gender diversity have many measurements, okay? The first one as maybe what you are measured already in your control gender diversity, you measure it as a number of female directors, maybe for CO 0 and 1 for dummy. Also, they use education or experience. So my question, CO education, is it here a proxy of gender or a proxy of age, maybe?
No, the CO education is actually like just what we are following with the prior studies, because we actually like we are not aware about like it is your field, Dr. Ahmed, so you are aware more than more proxies. But actually, what we are looking for the like corporate governance recent firms, they actually use it as a dummy variable. That if the CEO has an education major in engineering, it is 1 and 0 otherwise. And then actually. Yeah, and actually, when we have collected the data, I was like wondering with Dr. Fathia, do you think that this is a fine one? So we just look again and again and again. But actually, these are actually controlled by itself. So gender diversity, yes, could be like taken from different perspective. But as long as you know, I have a feminine co-author, so she considered to take the directives over the other.
No worries about. Forget about now the control. Let's focus on independence. See, if you see the education, doctor, more if the CO have maybe more education certificate, maybe he has more let's say experience. So this is maybe it's a proxy of age. If you get me. Also, another thing, you said it's a dummy variable that score value when to the CO education is major in engineering or 0 of other. What about professional certificate, let's say? So I read many papers regarding CO education, board of director educations, but mainly they put dummy, but not 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, or some maybe some score like this, so they can choose between let's say engineering and maybe master, PhD, or maybe a professional certificate, so they can see what kind of education they have or experience they have. So many of papers they put PhD, master, and these kind of certificate, but they forget about the professional certificates. So I think it's good idea if you can.
Yeah, I got your point.
Yeah.
That could be like, for instance, if he has a bachelor degree, it will be 1. If he has a master, it will be 2.
Yes.
PhD 3, and maybe
Yes.
a
Correct.
certificate will be 4.
Yeah.
Actually, this is
MBA.
yeah, but yes,
Or
yes. But this is actually for the CEOs and CEO education. We have received it as a major, and we need like to satisfy the reviewer. So we just like have like a specific time of frame. So we just go through it that way based on our readings. But it doesn't mean that actually what you are talking about, what you're talking about is more representative than what we have done. But actually, like, it is like a red flag emergency that we need like to go through it. And this is based on our readings. Now, it doesn't mean that it is actually wrong or right. It is one of the proxies used in the previous studies, but I believe
Correct.
that if I go through with one what you say, it will be much more brilliant. Actually, I hope that you were there to ask you.
No, no. But also, I really like your presentation, and also the references that you use, mostly 2020 and up to date, and also very good citations. However, there is you missed one of very good reference. His name is Ammar Ali Gill. His PhD thesis and one of his paper published in a 3-star ABS journal, British Accounting Review, one of a very good paper. Also, he talked about the diversity and, very detailed paper. He talked about CO diversity and many of these things. His name is Gill. I think in 2017, 2018, he published a paper. Ammar Ali Gill. Ammar Ali
Yeah.
Gill. G as good. ULL.
Well, actually, I know this one. I know this paper, and thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for that. We have actually another paper submitted now for the accountability, accounting management and policy journal. It is now under review about the impact of the gender diversity on the carbon accounting and the carbon performance. And actually, I believe that the proxy for the gender diversity for the gender diversity there, we use it from this paper. So this is actually, like, I believe that it is a good one to look for, even for the audience, to based on the gender diversity one. So thank you for highlighting this one.
No worries. Also, based on as you said before, maybe the comment that one of the reviewers in the journal that you submit told you about. I don't know if you said it's a review comment or she rejected because of too many the word amount. So maybe you exceed the limit. So I totally agreed with her without reading the paper, because one thing, Dr. Ghassan, you use too many hypotheses. I think it's a good idea to split your paper to 2 papers. It will be so good. I don't know how many models that you use. I know it support your hypothesis. I know it's good, but it's too much. That's what I think about. And lastly, the last thing, actually, I was wondering about endogeneity and causality. If you are solve it, and when you said about you did the Hussman test regarding the fixed effect and random effects, and then after that you choose, or the test choose a round effect. That's fine, but it's not solve the endogeneity problem. Then after that, you said use GMM, systematic analysis, GMM. So if you use GMM, that's good. Now I think it's one of to solve this problem. So I think that's good. Thank you so much. I know I asked you a lot of questions, and now we'll open the floor. Dr. Zirtaj, Fatima, please. May you unmute your mic, please? Yes.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Ahmed Ansar and Dr. Ghassan sir. The paper was very interesting. I liked the paper. And I am working on a paper like CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility, Corporate Governance and Financial Performance of firm. So I want to ask, what aspects should I take from corporate governance to connect with corporate social responsibility?
Okay, thank you for your question. Actually, usually in the corporate governance, and maybe Dr. Ahmed can correct me, that there are some common mechanisms that you cannot like ignore. For instance, that if you are looking for the, let's say, board composition, in this case, you will take the board size, board meeting, and the board characteristics. So in this case, you need like to look forward for the literature review of the CSR and see what are the most common corporate governance mechanisms. But yet you need to add some further, take the risk to add some further that in order to add to the knowledge. Now the idea is that you can just like say, as I can see from your question, how is CSR and corporate governance mechanisms impact on firm performance? Well, actually, there is an impact because actually that the CSR is actually voluntary to do, but actually sometimes it is better to show, like let's say, a good mirror of the company that we are doing some community service and social service. So in this case, you will actually see through the eyes of the firm performance. Now, sometimes the company will use, let's say, the CSR to hide some firm performance or poor performance, or let's say sometimes they use the CSR for tax avoidance. They make some community service in order to reduce the net income, in order to have a tax avoidance and so on. So the idea is that you need like to look at it from the literature review first, but definitely some corporate governance mechanisms that they should be there. Now, in my paper, for instance, I have already included CEO diversity and so on, and these are the most typical because I have said in the paper these are the most common. And the reviewer politely he said that I am aware that these are the most common, but what about this and that? So in this case, like some let's say reviewers will say, why do not include this? Why do not include the CEO age and CEO education? In this case, the paper do not have a contribution to knowledge. But on the other hand, sometimes maybe they will say what they will say. Okay, how you can do this and that. So the idea is that there are some common corporate governance mechanisms that you have to include from my own perspective, even though that you are looking on CSR or whatever. But mainly you need also to dig deep into the literature review of the CSR and to see what are the most that one that will be effect. And if you want to have a high quality paper, like in high quality impact and high impact, you need also to add, to take the risks to add a further one that no one have done before. So I hope that will answer your question.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Ahmed Khatan, sir.
You are almost welcome.
Anil?
Assalamu alaikum, sir. I am calling from Mumbai. I am doing my work. My title is Nexus of Working Capital Financing and Working Capital Management Firm Value. So I wanted to know how can, if I can replicate one of your studies you have shown in the Indian context. Is it okay if I can do that?
Dr. Anil, may you please, your voice is not clear. If you can, make your mic far away a little bit so we can hear you clearer.
Okay. Now clear, sir?
Yes.
I wanted to know, sir, I am calling from Mumbai. I wanted to know whether that the slides you have shown, whether this kind of study can be replicated in Asian context, Indian context mainly.
Well, for me, I do not prefer to make a replication study on a different business environment. Now, if you want to do something that someone done before, you need to add like something new. Okay. So the idea is that, for instance, yeah, you need to add a contribution through the new variable, or you can like use a different theory, or like find a link between two theories. So the idea that in my paper, for instance, like the intellectual capital disclosure, if you write down in Google Scholar ISD, you will find a lot of papers. But the idea is that you need like to, let's say, I'm not going to say manipulate the paper, but rather than you need like to find a new way to do that. So if you want to do, for instance, my paper in India, it will be fine, but you need like to use different perspectives, different corporate governance mechanisms, based on the Indian environment. So again, here as Dr. Zertaj questioned that some corporate governance mechanisms, they are like common, but some they will be related to a specific thing. I'll give you another example, Dr. Anil. Like sometimes, like for instance, for instance, for the carbon accounting paper that I have submitted to, uh, the idea is that when we look at with also with Dr. Fathiya, but when we look with Dr. Fathiya about the French environment, they actually have some regulation related to the environment. So if we look at something mandatory, this will be useful. The answer is no. So what we have done, we have take a look into the CDP reports, which means the Carbon Disclosure Project reports, which is a non-profitable affair. That from there you can take the angle from a different perspective in order to see, like let's say, environmental, yes, but not mandatory from a voluntary way. So the idea is that you can take the paper, but not intellectual capital in the CEO statement. You can take the paper, intellectual capital disclosure in the whole, let's say, annual report. It will be tough on you, but again, it could be a new contribution to knowledge.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Anil, I think that the big question for you, why you want to do it in India, why, or wherever the context that you use. So, for example, Dr. Ghassan, he chose French context, and he put in his presentation the contribution and the implication of his paper. So maybe I don't know. I just some ideas coming from my head. Just maybe if you can, for example, do something about COVID-19, let's say, it will be interesting. Maybe if you can choose another theory, different theories that Dr. Ghassan chose, and you link it to your hypothesis, maybe here there is something. So why you want to choose India? Why is not Pakistan? I know you are Indian, but it's not the right answer. So you need to know why. So this is the why. It's the big question for you. If and also diversity nowadays. Maybe Dr. Ghassan can also comment on that. Diversity, there is many papers nowadays talk about diversity. In many conferences, let's say, you can see, and also the publishing papers. So I believe if you can read the latest paper, publishing paper that they publish nowadays, so maybe you can find a new way, let's say. Also in the end uh, Dr. Ghassan paper, and I really appreciate what he did. Rare researcher that they do it also in a public, like webinars or conferences, which is a future research. I really appreciate Dr. Ghassan when you put it, and please, Dr. Ghassan, if you can also share it again. It's a good idea for you if you can use this future research. Future research, it's a gap already. It's a gap. So, Dr. Ghassan, I don't know how many months or years working in this paper, and all what the hard work, he found some gaps. He filled some, but not all of them. So as you can see, competitive disadvantage relating to ICDs, innovation tools related to ICDs. So and also these all its gaps. So if you can do the same and you can fill this gap, it will be good. It will be a good contribution. What do you think, Dr. Ghassan?
Well, I totally agree with you, Dr. Ahmed, because actually identifying a research gap is like you need before you start asking this question to yourself. If I done this and that, so what? So the question actually, when I have like a PhD presentation, sometimes if I want to be harsh on the PhD student, I will ask him, okay, you have done this, so what? For me, if I am like a regulator or a stakeholder, how is it this will be beneficial for me? So the idea is that you can start asking yourself, what is my contribution to knowledge, as Dr. Ahmed said, and then from this standing point of view, you can go through of what you are looking for.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
You are most welcome.
I think that's it, Dr. Ghassan. I really appreciate your time and your effort. I really enjoy your presentation. Maybe, you know, it's my research course, so I really like it, enjoy it, and I want to know, you know, the details. You know, most people, you know, most researcher want to know the topic and, you know, the idea of the research. But for me, I need to know the details between, you know, your research line. I really like it, and good luck, and I hope in couple of months or maybe this month, inshallah, you will publish your paper and see it in real life. Thank you so much, Dr. Ghassan. And also I really want to thank all who join our webinar, ITAR webinar today. And don't forget, before you leave, after you leave the webinar, there is a small survey. Please complete it. Any last word, Dr. Ghassan, before we leave?
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank
Just maybe wait Dr. Ghassan for 1 minute until he reconnect. So you will find after leaving the webinar a small survey if this is your first time in ITAR, or if you wanted to present with us in the future. So please, you can write your topic and your email, and I will reach you soon. Just 1 minute until Dr. Ghassan join.
sorry, I have disconnected somehow.
No worries. We'll come back. Yes.
So I will just like say here, like my point to be, first of all, I would like to thank you to have me this opportunity to be there actually, and it is my pleasure to actually be your guest again. And my point is that I want to show that even though that you will have a major revision, that doesn't mean that your paper is not good, but rather than it depends on the reviewer comments. And actually, as you can see, the link between the two theories, it was out of my doubt. The CO Edge and CO Education, it was out of my doubt. All of this has incremental adding to the literature. So publication for me is actually what I can say, that 70% based on your work, 10% based on the let's say the professionality of the journal, and 20% based on luck, because actually sometimes maybe you will send the paper to another journal, but the editor will not send it to reviewers because he sees something that you cannot see.
Yes.
So this is what I believe in. So, and I would like to share with you something, just I will not take too much time. I have a paper that has been rejected 14 times, but it doesn't mean that this is the end of the world. On the other hand, it's published on a B journal, a 2-star journal. And this paper actually from the first submission, first shot, it comes in. So the idea is that you take the reject with, let's say, with spiritual sport taken into consideration that, okay, I have been rejected because there are too many reasons. Maybe the journal, they only have 5% or 10% of acceptance. So roughly they can send you that,
Yes.
I cannot have your paper. It is a good paper, but I already have the yearly acceptance rate, and that's it. So it is actually, again, it is based on luck. And thank you again. Thank you for the attendance. It was my pleasure to being with you today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghassan, and appreciate your work and time. And also thank you, the audience who come today joining us to our ITAR webinar. Thank you. And the next webinar next week will be on 15th of October with Dr. Hidayah, the associate professor in accounting in Southampton University in United Kingdom, about psychological exploration of governance, ethical, and audit practices in organization. Thank you so much, and see you next week. Salam.
Assalamu alaikum.